We've got breaking news out of college football where LSU quarterback Jayden Daniels has won this year's Heisman Trophy. He is the third Tigers player to win the award and the first since Joe Burrow back in 2019. Daniels accounted for 50 total touchdowns this season, with 40 coming through the air and 10 on the ground. He is the fourth player since '07 to win the Heisman, despite being part of a 3-loss team. So great recognition for Jayden Daniels, as he is your 2023 Heisman winner. All right, so Chris Williamson here with you alongside CBS Sports NFL writer Ryan Wilson, and over there in the virtual world, we got Tom Fornelli, a CBS Sports college football analyst. And guys, what a shocker. Jayden Daniels wins it. Tom, I got to ask you first, what was your reaction seeing LSU get another Heisman Trophy winner in such an electrifying player with Jayden Daniels?
It was not one of surprise, as you just alluded to. I think this has been the worst kept secret for a while now, since the votes were all in last week, and the odds kind of shifted very heavily in Jayden Daniels' favor. I mean, it shouldn't come as a surprise. He was the best player in college football all season. From week to week, Jayden Daniels never had a bad game. And you mentioned LSU lost 3 games. That's true. They did not win an SEC title. They're not in the college football playoff. Doesn't change the fact that Jayden is the best player in the country. When you look at his stats, as you mentioned him earlier, a lot of times you'll see a player kind of stat pad in blowout wins and all that kind of stuff. And Jayden had some of those moments this year in games against Army. But for the most part, those numbers that Jayden Daniels put up, his team needed them because his defense was always giving up points in a hurry. So LSU is in a position where they had to win games 45-42. And time and again, Jayden Daniels was able to step up, get the plays made when they had to be made, and lead LSU to win. So I think he's a very deserving winner of the award this year.
Yeah, he rose to the moment each time that he was asked to, maybe outside of the Florida State game, the first game of the season. But Ryan, I want to ask you specifically, at what moment did you know Jayden Daniels was going to win the Heisman? Because up until championship week, some people were still thinking that Bo Nix might be the guy to take home that hardware.
Right, and I think that's exactly what it was, because we saw Michael Penix go and beat Oregon twice this year, and last Saturday was the last time they did that, and that's what put Michael Penix Jr. in this conversation, and that's probably what allowed Jayden Daniels to make it clear that he was going to overtake Bo Nix. I think Tom's exactly right. This feels like Jayden Daniels' award. It's just a matter of going through the formalities of actually making the announcement, and Tom and his guys at Cover 3 do a great job of explaining. I feel like, Tom, it's sort of like you have the kids, and then I take him to college when we talk about the draft. So Tom has talked about Jayden Daniels since he was back at Arizona State. And I think, Tom, you would admit that 4 years ago, no one on God's green earth probably thought Jayden Daniels would be in this situation. But your larger point, and I'm actually curious what Tom thinks about this. Caleb Williams is almost certainly going to be quarterback 1 drafted April 25th. Drake May will be in that conversation as well. But I don't think anyone was more productive in college, and Tom sort of alluded to that, than what we saw Jayden Daniels do this year for a team that, yes, they lost 3 games, but they would have lost many, many more games had Jayden Daniels not been out there. And one of the most impressive games for me, Chris, was the Alabama game. Another game they lost. He had to leave early in the 4th quarter because of concussion. If he had played that game, there's a pretty good chance that Alabama's not in the Final Four. Our guy Danny Cannell will be much happier because his team, Florida State, would be in the Final Four. And that's the only thing that saved Alabama, to the tune of Dallas Turner with that unfortunate hit on Jayden Daniels and knocked him out of that game.
Absolutely. But, you know, Tom, one of the things that we know here on CBS Sports HQ is you are a Heisman voter. You had Jayden Daniels going first, but your second pick probably going to surprise some people, because you had Rome Odunze.
Love it.
Explain that here, because he was not in New York.
Rome wasn't even in the top 10. I don't know if you saw the finalists for it. I was shocked when I saw that, because, I mean, honestly, everybody that was in the top 10, everybody that was there as a finalist, I completely understand why anybody would vote for them. What I do not understand is how Rome Odunze didn't get any love, seemingly, from the rest of the country, because you stack his numbers up against Marvin Harrison, guess what? Rome Odunze was better than Marvin Harrison across the board for the most part. And really, the one reason I had him there and I didn't have Michael Penix is that if you look at Michael Penix this season, he had bad games. There was a bad game against Arizona State. There was a bad game against Washington State. There was a subpar game against Arizona. Rome Odunze was there every single week. Rome Odunze never had a bad game this season. I think his worst game was 5 catches for 64 yards. I compare that to Marvin Harrison. I covered the games against Indiana, Notre Dame, and Rutgers. Marvin was invisible for most of those games. Rome Odunze was never invisible. He was always the star on that Washington offense. So I wanted to let him know that at least one person out there recognized what he was doing this season.
Yeah, and I know that NFL scouts are going to be recognizing him when he plays in the NFL, when he declares for the draft. Speaking of the draft, Ryan, how do you think Jayden Daniels projects as an NFL QB, especially knowing that he isn't, as we see here on the TV screen, he isn't the most chiseled guy. His frame is not that solid, and he takes a lot of hits sometimes.
He is slight of frame, but we heard during the Heisman ceremony, he was talking about when he saw Lamar Jackson get the award back in 2016, that was his green light to sort of follow in those footsteps. And he reminds me in a lot of ways of Lamar Jackson. Lamar is a little thicker. Jayden's a little taller, and they both do a lot of things really well in the open field. If you give him space in the second level, that's a wrap, whether you're a linebacker or defensive back. He's gotten much better as a passer. He's starting to throw with some anticipation this year, which is what you want to see when you talk about next level. He'll make the tight window throws, and his decision-making, by and large, was always on point, and that's why they were in so many of these football games. All told, what does this mean? I think he's going to be the 3rd quarterback drafted. We saw with Michael Penix Jr. the concerns with the injuries. He's had 2 ACLs, 2 shoulder injuries. Caleb Williams, for me, as I mentioned, is QB1.
Right.
Drake May is going to be in the QB1A, QB2 conversation, depending on what kind of quarterback you're looking for. And then Jayden Daniels is going to be right there. And I was texting a few folks in the league last week, and I said, is it crazy that Jayden might go ahead of Drake May? And what I got back was, no, it's not crazy. They didn't say, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, but it's something that will be discussed as we go through the draft process. And this is just the early stages. And as Tom knows, we have until January 15th for these players to decide who's coming and who's staying. I would imagine we know who's going to come out and who's staying, but this is going to be a fun conversation to have over the next 140 days.
Oh, yeah, I cannot wait to see it all play out. Tom, what about you? How do you think Jayden projects as an NFL QB?
Well, first of all, Ryan, the biggest difference between Lamar and Jayden is that Lamar's Heisman moment involved him hurdling a guy against Syracuse during his senior season.
Now, why did you have to bring up Syracuse? Why did you have to bring up Syracuse? I went to Syracuse, man. You didn't have to do that.
I live in Syracuse.
Now I got PTSD. Thank you.
I'm just saying, it's like Lamar avoids contact. Jayden Daniels actively seeks it out. I sometimes wonder if Jayden Daniels, like during his off time, just runs into the street seeing if a car will hit him. It terrifies me at times. But I do think that he has made tremendous strides as a passer, as Ryan was alluding to. This is a guy who, like earlier you mentioned, Ryan, when he first started at Arizona State, I did not have him pegged as an NFL quarterback one day or a Heisman winner. I had him pegged as a very fun college football quarterback, but that's about it. But he has grown so much over the course of his college career. And I do wonder if we're going to start seeing more stories like this with NIL in college football, where guys who at the quarterback position maybe aren't projected to be 1st or 2nd round guys stick around for a few years and actually develop, because we have seen so many guys leave after 3 years to the NFL and then get put in bad situations or sit on the bench and never really actualize their potential. Whereas now they have the chance to stay in college, continue to play, continue to learn the game, and grow as players and improve their draft stock. Because I'm with you, Ryan. I think Jayden has a very good chance of being a 1st round pick and the 3rd quarterback taken in this draft.
Which says a lot. That is an accomplishment in itself, based on everything you guys said, from where he started to where he's finished at LSU. So Jayden Daniels is the 2023 Heisman winner. Tom, what about 2024? Let's already look ahead, because the college football playoff hasn't even happened yet, but who cares, right? Who do you have on your top 10 list or top 5 as expected Heisman finalists potentially for next season?
I think the obvious places to start are Jalen Milroe at Alabama, who was nearly a finalist this year, who's going to come back, and he'll probably have another spectacular season. I think if Quinn Ewers stays at Texas, he'll be in the conversation, or if he leaves, Arch Manning will be in the conversation because he's his likely replacement at that spot. Carson Beck at Georgia is somebody to keep an eye on, who had a very strong second half of the season. J.J. McCarthy finished 10th in the voting this year. If he comes back and is back under Harbaugh, I think he's going to have another stellar season. And another name to keep an eye on, who currently does not have a team because he is in the transfer portal. Wherever Cameron Ward ends up, be that at USC or Ohio State or somewhere else, he is going to put up monster numbers. He is a very talented player who is kind of like a thicker version of Jayden Daniels, who could make that same kind of leap if he ends up in the right spot and in a brighter spotlight.
Cannot wait to see how the 2024 Heisman race shakes out. Tom Fornelli, Brian Wilson, we appreciate your insight as always. So once again, Jayden Daniels, the winner for 2023. He is the third LSU Tiger to win the Heisman. The other two, Joe Burrow back in 2019. We know how magical that year was. And Billy Cannon, 1959, just a little bit before I was born.